Hey there, and welcome to WP Roundtable. This is episode number 13 of our Google Hangout on Airs. And today we are discussing speeding up your WordPress website. Kyle.
Hey everybody, I'm Kyle Maurer. I'm lead developer for Real Big Marketing, based in Jackson, Michigan. Pleasure to be here.
Nathan.
Hey everybody, Nathan Driver here with the Allman Group in Dayton, Ohio. Digital media strategist / web developer. How's everybody doing?
Doing great. How are you, Nate?
Fantastic.
I speak for the group.
Go for it, Kellen.
All right. Kellen Mace from the east side of Michigan. Kyle, got it right this time. Based in Rochester Hills area. Freelance web developer. My website is down below. Give me a ring or drop me a line if you need some freelance work done. Happy to be on tonight talking about site speed.
Yeah.
Brian.
I'm Brian Redder, based out of Dayton, Ohio, WordPress developer. Happy to be here too.
All right, so I guess I'll kick it all off. Today we're talking about speeding up your website, and I know that at least a few of us have got 100 things we're going to want to go with. And I'm going to start off with my two favorite performance tools. And this one is GT Metrics, and I like this one. I like these two tools most because they give you detailed answers about what is actually slowing you down. So we used our website, WP Roundtable, for this, and I'm pretty happy. It recommends we use some CSS sprites, and I know that's going to be for our social media icons, and maybe I'll get around to changing that up one of these days and specifying dimensions for images. That's kind of a iffy one on the landing page, but it goes through your various different options using cookie-free domains. We failed that miserably, but not a big deal.
Sorry. At least you're honest about it. That's nice.
Well, I mean, okay. Oh my! I failed to share the screen, didn't I? So there we go. Yeah, like I said, GT Metrics, one of my favorites, just because it does this, gives you the rundown of exactly what you're doing well and what you're not doing well on. And this is one of my favorites, and apparently we need to fix some image issues. But it comes through, and you've got just a few basic things that tells you you're either good on or not good on, and we obviously need to work on our images, but time to first byte, that's hit or miss. With server, that's all server. Keep it able alive, compress, transfer, caching, and CDNs. Just real quick on this one, I guess, for the images, one of the things, I know Kellen and I spoke recently about this, and actually Brian and I were speaking right before we came on here about using something called Image Optim, which will compress your images and get these both up to A's. We just have a few.
Which is a Mac app, right?
Yes, it's a Mac app. Actually, if anybody knows of an equal, so what Image Optim does is it takes an image and it losslessly reduces using multiple different algorithms to keep the photos and images at the same quality, while reducing the size and cutting out the nonsense that's not really necessary. It will also, if it deems appropriate for that particular image using various other algorithms, it will produce progressive JPEGs. And what that is, maybe if you guys remember back from the old dial-up days where the whole image would show up on your screen and then it would slowly become something visible that made sense. Well, nowadays it's done in like 3 to 5 layers, and it's done a lot faster, but depending on the image, it can speed up or slow down the actual image, even though it kind of seems counterproductive. But the Image Optim will go through and determine whether that needs to be done to that particular photo or not, and it will also compress all your images. So I mean, just looking on here, I know one of our issues is going to be that we've got a YouTube video right on the main page, and that's going to see that as a non-compressed image until it starts playing. But I think all the rest of our other images should all be compressed. It's just that aspect above the fold that I think is what's holding us down on the D. But so there we have it. As far as CDNs, I use what are we using? Somebody work with me here. Livefire. Drawing a blank. And the caching, I've actually disabled our caching plugin, so we're simply using the themes caching right now. So,
which is actually interesting because you're already getting a B just from the theme developer.
Well, I don't want to. Well, I guess if you guys might go back, I didn't want to point this out, but we had that issue after we had the Dustin Hartzler interview, where our caching plugin kept causing new posts not to show up for whatever reason. It wouldn't show up until like another post was posted, so I ended up having to cut that out until we get time to mess with it and look at it. Just using the theme one, which I'm pretty happy with it, a B for static caching. So those are my two favorite testing sites. The Google test page, Google's Page Speed Insights, I believe it is. Yeah. That one's another good one to use. I have a lot of issues with how that one actually runs its test, but it's a good one to understand what Google is recognizing on your site. So on that one, we're doing okay, but again, there was some minifying issues that I took out our minify plugin as well when I took off the caching plugin. So we got to replace that at some point. But I'm pretty happy with how we're looking, and those are some of the big hit features that I look at. So both of those offer me the options to just go down and select what is wrong with the site and start going through and individually eliminating those problems on each site. Anybody else?
Has anybody here? I have a problem when it because we're talking about page speed, because one of the issues is caching, right? That we all come across, especially with large sites. Has anyone come across with multi-site issues with caching, specifically W3 cache?
Yeah, I've had issues with it in the past. Largely, it's so much more complicated to utilize all of the settings that W3 Total Cache comes with effectively in a multi-site situation, especially if the sites differ in how they're put together, what plugins they're running. It's more difficult to apply like global settings and stuff like that. But are you referring to specific problems?
I don't like to work in multi-site. I just had a problem with a specific multi-site where I was trying to speed up obviously the site speed, but in doing so, it actually brought down one of the sites within the network.
Wow.
So, I don't know if anyone's ever come across with that, with multi-site and caching. So I just wanted to kind of put it out there.
I know it's more complicated to work with, especially if you're doing like CDN stuff. That gets a little tricky to handle the subsites differently.
Well, they weren't subsites. They were different domains, so it was domain mapping on it.
Okay.
I'm not that 100% comfortable with multi-site. I'm not a huge fan of it yet. I'm working on it on a couple different projects, but with the caching, with that one situation, it really kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know if it was the hosting environment or how it was originally developed, but I just wanted to see if anyone else had similar issues with multi-site and caching.
I don't know that I've had similar issues to that, but I've definitely have a lot of experience using multi-site networks and managing, reasonable sized networks and using W3 Total Cache on them. I guess to to get to the bottom of like your specific problem, I'd be looking at what you are using for caching. You know, are you using like the standard PHP caching, or are you using something like APC or Xcache?
Well, I was using the popular plugin W3 Total Cache.
Right, right. So within that, there are settings. I'd love to bring it up on my one of my installations so I can give you exactly what I'm talking about. But within W3 Cache's total, W3 Total Cache is.
I know there's a lot of settings to it, but I mean, just in general, overall.
Yeah. Really, the best ways to get the most, some of the ways to get the most power out of that plugin is to be utilizing, and I think they'd call it an opcode caching system on the back end, which would be installed on your server. So you'd be using something like APC or Xcache, or the other one is EasyCache or something like that. These are modules that you install on your server if you have that access, because they're just significantly faster than the default stuff. And I wish I could find exactly where that is. Do we have that installed, Jason, on our website?
Which one is that?
W3 Total Cache.
I don't think so.
I believe so, but uninstalled, or not uninstalled, but
Not
Not
active.
active.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd love to be able to.
I mean, you can activate it, roll with it if it's on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Just do a screen share and show the users exactly how to set it up.
Oh yeah.
For the next 20 minutes, just go through that setup.
Yeah, we don't have sufficient time to go through W3 Total Cache's settings. I don't know of many plugins that have like more settings and options than W3 Total Cache. Not gonna lie.
It's a great plugin. It's just one that you really need to take your time in. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that's a fact. So this is what I want to do. Let me share my screen real quick, because I just don't want to get this wrong. All right, you can see my screen.
Yeah.
All right, we're in the dashboard here, WPRoundtable.com. Looking at the settings for W3 Total Cache. You'll see that there's sections for page caching, minification, database, object caching, all this fun different stuff. But in particular, what I was talking about is in my experience with W3 Total Cache, you've got different caching options based on your server setup. So that's what's going to appear in this drop down here. These options will be present for most of the different utilities that come with this plugin. What method you want to use. So by default, Disk Enhanced is decent, but if you do have a server environment that you're able to install one of these opcode cache utilities, then you're going to get far better performance out of this plugin than you would using simply disk. Just reasons, kind of high-level technical things, and I'm no server administrator, but I did have great experience installing some of these. I tried several of these opcode tools, but APC turned out to be the best one for me, and greatly improved page load times, made the cache load so much faster. So that's really kind of like the optimal setup for W3 Total Cache would be using an opcode caching system.
But that's only for dedicated or virtual servers, right?
Right. If you're on a VPS or something like that, anything where you have access to your server where you can install things on it, then that would be ideal. According to the plugin author, I think I've even seen him, say that really, if you're not using opcode, this is going to help you, but if you want to get serious about page load, you got to use opcode caching.
Cool.
Yeah, I have just a thought or two on that. One is, for those who may be watching, wondering if caching is the right solution. I have learned that it really pays off with higher traffic sites. Shaving down page load times is always a good thing. It's never a bad thing. But if you don't get very much traffic on the site, the returns on setting up a caching solution is going to be kind of slim compared to doing some of the other things that we may talk about, like minifying your JavaScript and CSS files and all your images, because those things are going to add to the page load times a lot more. It's only when you get to these very large like networks, or huge multi-site installations, that Nate might be speaking of, or just higher traffic sites when caching all of a sudden plays a bigger role. I've found myself, comparing the two plugins I'm most familiar with, I think are the most popular for WordPress, the W3 Total Cache we've been speaking about, and also WP Super Cache is the other big name one out there. At first, I was using Total Cache because it blows Super Cache away in terms of, and I've seen some comparisons, and it just shaves off a lot more speed. So it seemed like the better plugin to me. I was using Total Cache for a little while, but I did run into some issues even on single site installations. I was finding that some of my client sites, it was if I made a change to the site and I wouldn't see it happen, and I quickly thought, oh, it must be the caching plugin, no big deal. I'll just disable it, or I'll just turn it off, and also clear the cache or dump the cached versions, and then when I refresh the page, it should be just fine. But that wasn't the case with Total Cache, and I'm still at a loss for why that is. I was still having trouble. I had to clear my browser's cache manually every single page load just to get it to update with any changes. So I think, in my opinion, at least, between those two plugins, if you're looking for, again, if you have a lower traffic site and you don't need something that has all the bells and whistles, you just kind of need a simpler turnkey solution that's not going to result in some of those problems. I found the WP Super Cache to be a little better for that. Again, the simple sites where you just want a turnkey solution, just a simple plugin, you can kind of set it and forget it, so to speak, then I recommend Super Cache. But Total, again, that wins for benchmarks. That may be necessary for like higher traffic sites. So just my 2 cents on that.
No, that's a great point, though. Brian, what do you have to add on this?
We're talking all about plugins we can add to WordPress and things we can do to improve WordPress itself from WordPress. But really, it comes down to the server. The server has to be able to get up to speed with everything. It has to be able to keep up with everything. It has to be able to read things efficiently. So it's more than just the WordPress website, the theme, the plugins, things like that. One thing I suggest doing is, if you're able to, this works with Apache and Nginx, is Google's page speed module. And I will throw the website up here for you. It's down there at the lower third. The page speed module, basically, it helps speed up your site from a server side versus a code side. I mean, it says right on the home page, it applies the web performance best practices to the page, and it doesn't require you to modify any of your content or even any of the way you develop. So it doesn't necessarily even require you to use things like Sass or CoffeeScript, or even minification of these files. Not necessary. Google's done a really good job about creating this module for you that just plugs in, installs on Apache and Nginx. So just always keep that in mind, that not just the code that you need to focus on, it's also the server setup.
So, Brian, does this have anything to do with Speedy?
With Speedy?
Yeah. SPDY?
Yeah, I'm at a loss on that one.
I am too.
Okay, so for those like really interested in page load stuff, there's some cool stuff coming down the pike, and I'd expect you guys have at least heard of some of it, but it's like new stuff on the horizon that's getting to be a big deal here pretty soon, and will be in the future. But right now, and I probably shouldn't go too far into it because I only have like kind of a beginner's level understanding of it. But Speedy, which is spelled SPDY, I think, is kind of and I think Google has something to do with it, a way for serving. I believe it has a lot to do with more concurrent requests.
Oh yeah. It's the new HTTP.
Well, it's not.
It's the SPDY instead of HTTP.
Yeah, it's like an alternative to HTTP.
Yeah.
At the same time, they're also developing, actively working on HTTP 2.0.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the future and where things will ultimately be going. For now, you can use SPDY, but I think we're going towards HTTP 2.0, you know, which is, from my understanding, is like a long time coming, but will essentially make the web in general a faster place, because the way things are right now, when a browser when a client loads a page, all the assets for the page, images, scripts, style sheets, you know, everything else, all of those are requests. And using HTTP, your browser can only handle like how many concurrent requests? Is it 4 or 6 or something like that?
Yeah, it's not many.
I think Jason was going to talk about the waterfall. And you can see it visually in the waterfall how many concurrent requests can be handled. So that means only so many things can be loaded at once, and then once those are loaded, the next batch can be loaded. And so there's a limitation to like how fast a page can be, you know, when you're loading so many assets. But in HTTP 2.0 and also with SPDY. You can increase the number of concurrent requests. That increase the number of things that load at the same time. So basically, you're like making a bigger pipe that you're pushing things through, so more things can go through at the same time. So I'd love to get an expert on the show and talk more about it at a later date and learn a little bit about it. I heard about it from more detail from Mika Epstein on her blog, halfelf.org, and also from Zach Tolman at WordCamp. He works at the Theme Foundry and knows a lot about site speed as well. So really interesting stuff, and we should put some links in the show notes, I think, because it's coming up.
Nice, nice. Yeah, let me show this real quick since you bring it up. So the waterfall, and you can see that so many are coming through at a time, and you can see the times that they all get started, one right after the other. Generally, I believe it can vary depending on your your server, but I generally it's between 4 and 8, I believe. Different calls that can come up at any given time. So we come back here and look at this one. We had 43 requests for the original load, and then 4 requests for refresh. So, and that's kind of where was that other one that I pulled up that was worth looking at? So here, where it says combine images using CSS sprites, on our website we have so 5, is that 5? 6 images for the different social media icons. Whereas if I were to combine those in a CSS sprite, they would only generate one request for those 6 images, and that's why it is over here telling me the biggest improvement I could do is to use CSS sprites, which would, again, exactly what you're saying, combine those 6 images into one image and send it all in one packet, only requiring one actual transfer and request. I know that makes sense to you guys, so I hope it makes sense to anybody who ever watches that in the future.
Do you guys use a lot of sprites when you're in developing mode?
It depends on what it is. I'll use sprites for like the icons, like the social icons. I'll have a sprite set up for those if I'm using images versus like Font Awesome or Fontello or something like that, or any kind of arrow type stuff I'll do in a sprite. But that's really about it.
Yeah, I'm definitely a huge proponent of icon fonts. Brian was referring to Font Awesome is a popular icon font library. I love incorporating those into my sites, and I love that that's a popular growing trend right now, is going towards a more simplistic graphical, I don't know, design paradigm, where we can use these font versions of these graphics, because it's just so awesome for development, for making pages load fast. So to step back a little bit, because we probably should talk about what icon fonts are a little bit. Anybody else can chime in if they want to, but icon fonts are just a font, just like any other web font that you would get. That's what your browser treats it like. Just like if you said you needed Arial or Papyrus. For some reason you want a Papyrus on your site. That's a font.
Everyone's favorite.
Because Papyrus rocks.
Papyrus.
It's one of the best fonts ever.
Yeah. So you can get icon fonts where the browser considers them just like another font, and they load pretty much instantaneously, and you can resize them and color them with CSS. Just using your basic styling properties, and incorporate them into design, and they can really enhance the design and look like real graphics, look like an image, basically, a very simple one, a single color one. But I love working them in because it doesn't create another request, another HTTP request like we just talked about, because an image would, it loads faster than pretty much anything. It loads as fast as a font does, so it's just like treated like plain text, and it's very flexible because you can resize it, recolor it, and do whatever with it, and it has no impact on the page's load. And they're so easy to use. I mean, it's awesome. We got tools out there like Ico Moon. We should definitely link to that, because that's like an awesome, freaking super cool tool. For there's tons of icon font libraries on Ico Moon. I think the address is icomoon.io. And there's tons of them already there, and then you can also make your own custom ones. So if you have like an Adobe Illustrator file, or your creative project, you can upload your graphics to Ico Moon, and then it'll give you font files that you just download and throw into your site project, and you can start using them on your sites. It's crazy easy. It's way easier than it sounds from my poor explanation.
Yeah.
But anyway.
One thing a coworker of mine turned me on to recently was Fontello, Fontello, which basically we're talking about site speed. With those font libraries, it's a big file that it installs, But what Fontello does is it takes and lets you pick the icons you need to use and creates a font with just those icons in there for you. So it makes a much smaller package that you have to install on your site.
Yeah, definitely. One point too worth noting, just kind of contrasting the two things we've been talking about. Those being image sprites, which would just be combining images all together. So only one file is downloaded, one HTTP request, versus using icon fonts that we've been talking about. And one distinction between them is icon fonts are awesome for all the reasons we've just discussed, except they are monochromatic or only one color. So these days with the kind of flat, more minimalistic design trends, that is ideal. Just as Kyle said, it makes it really clean looking to have those just single color icon fonts used on your site. However, if it's something that has to be have multiple colors, then that should prompt you to go for either a standalone image or a sprited image if it has to be more than one color. Anybody else?
Okay, so we've covered sprites and icons, huh?
Yeah. How about who's our resident pro on minifying JavaScript and CSS?
No, I just had a problem with minifying, so no. I am far from it.
I use Gulp to do it for me.
You use what?
Gulp.
What was it?
GULP. It's basically a task watcher. I can run it through some packages npm packages to minify it and prefix everything. That's one thing that I really like about it. It's got a prefixer. Cool. So I use the legitimate CSS3 class, and then it runs through the prefixer and pulls in everything that it needs. And I can define it, prefix for the last 10 versions or last 5 versions, things like that.
Okay.
Cool.
So it does it for me. Minifies everything.
No, I checked out WP Minify plugin. As a suggestion, and it worked great, except in IE, Firefox, and Safari.
So it worked great Chrome.
Yeah, if I stopped at IE, it would have been fine. But when it came across Firefox, I had to recheck it. So
I've never used the W3 Total Cache, but I saw in there's an option for minification.
Yes.
Have you ever used that?
I've used it, and it works. Yeah. It works great. It works as advertised, I think. It's a little bit of a manual process. I found it to be kind of a pain in the butt when trying to do it for multi-sites.
I think that's the problem I was having.
With minification?
It might have been, yeah.
Yeah, that's where it got tricky for me. I started to, you have to specify the files that you wanted to minify, and I had problems where it would put my code a little out of order, like styling and things like that, or load things, maybe a script where I didn't want it to, or something like that, and cause the pages to load weird. So I kind of stopped using that as my primary minification tool. Although in a single site installation, if you were running W3 Total Cache, I'd just use that. It'd be great.
Well, I had some issues with that at one point, and also the other Minify plugin. And I think I've completely kicked off the other Minify plugin on almost all my sites. But the other one, the one that's included in W3 Total Cache, I don't know. When I try to do it, I would either get something out of order, like social media icons would start like flipping around or moving out of place, and it seemed like half the time there was one issue or another, and it was always to save like one or two, like to combine two things, and it was just like, okay, you know what, let it go. It's not making that big of a difference on my speed, and I'm gonna roll with it.
Yeah, I'd say minification is nice, but not one of like the big things. You know, maybe I would say concatenation is probably bigger than minification.
Wait, what was that?
Concatenation would be combining files. So there's a single request, like putting all your style sheets in a single file,
Right.
or all your scripts in a single JavaScript file. So it's one request. You know, your browser can still work with it just fine. It doesn't need them to be in separate files. So I would think that in most cases that's a bigger deal than the code itself being minified, which for our viewers we didn't actually explain what that even is.
Yeah.
It's also called uglification, or uglify.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Holy crap.
Who wants to explain it?
Yeah, so minification or uglifying your file is basically taking all the white space out of your file that's not needed. Now, it's not going to take off white space in between two classes, so you lose your hierarchy of CSS classes that you're trying to target. But it condenses it down to, somewhere between 1 and 4 lines typically, depending on the size of the file.
Can you show us? Can you screen share a non-minified file and then a minified file?
Yeah, I can show you like the jQuery library.
Yeah, that's always minified.
Let me boot this up.
We'll wait.
So the jQuery library, WordPress uses jQuery. So they offer the uncompressed version or the non-minified version and the compressed version, which is minified or uglified version. So the uncompressed version, it looks like this. Unfortunately, I can't get a line count. I forget how many lines it is, but it's thousands. So you can see how long it is. It takes the browser, it might be it's not that much of a difference in time, but if you have a ton of these files, it's going to add up in time for you. So this is the non-compressed version, and then if we look at the compressed version, you can see this is actually a single line. My browser does word wrapping, so if I take this, open it up in Sublime, so here you can see we have 2 lines in this file.
See, as much as this is great, whenever I need to edit it, I always have problems with it.
Yeah, so that's an issue, and that's why I like Gulp, which I talked about earlier, because I can minify everything, and then I can do I can set it so it references back to the non-minified version of the file.
Right. Yeah.
So I can modify it there, and then I just run the Gulp command again, or if I have my watcher set up, it automatically updates the minified version. So I can modify my non-minified version, but in my code reference the minified version. If that makes sense.
You can non-minify your minify. Yeah. I got it.
Yeah. I followed you.
So
the
minified jQuery is 7 lines actually, but that's going down from. Let me just paste this whole thing in here. That's going down from 10,308 lines.
All right. It's kind of like I work with Sass when I'm doing my styling, and that's pre-processed CSS, and so you can set your project to when it processes your Sass and outputs your style.css file, which you never actually edit directly, you can tell that to just be minified. You can tell it to output the compressed version of your CSS. So we can, that's what you deploy to your server, to your project. But you're always working in within the Sass files. So, kind of like that.
Yeah.
I second using Sass. Super cool. The other thing that we mentioned a moment ago is getting everything into one CSS file is ideal as well. So in Sass, you can kind of have the best of both worlds. You can have everything organized into, various different files for various parts of your site. But then when it all gets minified and turned into one file that's minified, then it's the absolute lowest it could be for page load time. So kind of cool in that regard. So go ahead, Brian. What else did you have?
Yeah, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Did you have something else?
Nope.
Oh, sorry, I thought you did.
Nope.
I've got a question for you guys. Just let's just toss it around. So when you get a client or somebody who's like, my site's slow, whatever, this sucks. Help me out, man. And you go and you take a look at it. What are the common things? What can we just what are the big ones that you don't even need to test it? You just say there's your problem right there.
Oh, the host.
Oh, so you say host, I say images.
The host.
Me too. Images.
Images. See, I'm not alone.
Yeah, first thing for me is the host. And I've got a couple that I would name, but I'm not going to. I'm going to hold back on that one.
That's probably smart, Brian, because we have a lot of viewers who are sensitive.
What about you, Jason? What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, host is usually one of the last things, unless it's like a real hosting company that I really hate. Hosting is one of the last things I go to try to change. Photos are one of the easiest things to fix, and they're one of the...
I mean, I just have seen it where clients, well, not just clients, where websites have just basically taken their camera phone or just a regular camera and just taken a photo and just straight upload it to the website. So a regular picture, which is maybe 120 kilobytes, is now 2.4 megabytes, and so it's just killing the load speed.
Well, yeah, I mean, I use an 18 megapixel camera for my photography stuff, and there's no way that I'm gonna be able to put that on a website, and it's poster size. There's no way I'm not gonna get a very, very slow website with that. So, yeah, I mean, that's definitely an issue. You gotta put it in. Make sure you put it out in either a JPEG or PNG, preferably a JPEG with photos. I think. Crop it to the biggest thing is crop it to the size that you need it for. So. On my websites, I'll have a separate size. Even if I'm using the same photo for the featured image as I've got in the article, I'll export it twice and do it once at a 125 or whatever my featured image size is. Because when your landing page or you're on your main blog page, you're going to have 5, 10, however many posts you've got. You're going to have that many featured images having to get pulled up, and you don't want WordPress having to try to push out, or your host trying to push out these large images and press them in. So yeah, I go ahead and do that with icon images, have a separate setting, pump them out, and then have 2 or 3 different settings for how wide I'm going to want that photo within my post. But definitely that's a big one. Make sure you edit those out with whatever photo editing software you use. And then the last step for me is using ImageOptim. And I know there's another one. There's a WordPress Smush It.
Yeah, I was just going to say Smush It. It's actually really good. It's not great for large images because they do have a capacity of over, I want to say, 180 kilobytes. I know that's small, but it's for larger or for smaller sites. So it's a great plugin.
Smush It is okay if you don't want to put in the time. Because for me, using ImageOptim is simply I drag the image from my desktop into the application. It immediately runs everything. JPEGs take about 1 second, 2 seconds, depending on the size. PNGs will take about 10 or 15 seconds to run through all the algorithms to compress them. But I think it's well worth the time. Smush It's kind of the results that I was getting with Smush It were about I was getting about 10 times better results with Image Optim than I was with Smush It.
Yeah, I would throw into that equation answering my question too. That I've had experience with really bad WordPress plugins that people picked up. I found some that the clients picked up. Maybe they were purchased on some marketplace. I don't know where. Who knows? I remember going to a client site last year, and somebody had like this cute little carousel of pictures that scrolled across the screen, and they were just little pictures. And typically WordPress does a pretty good job with loading the right image for the right case. If you tell it to load the thumbnail, it's going to load like a 150 by 150 picture. And isn't going to blow anything up. It's pretty practical. But in this case, this person was like, my site's just dead slow, and they were totally right. So on further inspection, I realized that this little carousel that was loading these little images, when I popped them open, they were actually the full image but shrunk down to fit, and so they were like 7 megabytes per picture. So with like a dozen images loading in this carousel, it was just like this awful monstrosity. So it was just like a really, really unseasoned, inexperienced developer creating some piece of crap plugin and selling it to innocent clients who just don't know better. And end result is terrible sites or business for me.
So wait, you're blaming the plugin developer for compressing the photo into the size that they wanted it to be in?
No. It was loading the full image on the page, but it was the page, the styling was making it fit into its container.
Right.
So it looks like it's like a 150 by 150 image, but it's actually like 3,000 by 3,000.
Yeah. Well, that's what standard the featured image standard out of WordPress will do as well. It'll just compress that same size image into, the 150 or whatever size block that you've got your featured images set for, and that's going back to why I recommend using different images for that, because especially if you're going to especially if you've got a website with a lot of photography and you want that high quality photography of maybe 700 or 900 pixels wide image, you don't want that being compressed and having to load up 10 of those images on the front page that are really just being compressed into that size.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I got something here. Jason turned me on to Image Optim, so I'm totally sold on that as well. I did find a comparable Windows app. It looks like is File Optimizer, all one word, something similar to Image Optim. But I think that's a great tool, and it's ideal, especially if you're the developer loading the images in there to be used on the site going forward. One thing I like Smush It for, though, is for the client. For it to reduce the file size of their pictures just on the fly as they upload them. That's what I found that to be really, really good for. So if you have somebody who's a photographer or is going to be routinely, or even just their featured images or whatever, if they're going to be routinely uploading images to the sites, there's a WordPress Smush It plugin that you can install on their site and just check a box to say automatically smush any images upon upload. So that means this photographer or whoever your client may be, the only real training you have to do for this person is scale it down to, as some of you guys already said, to whatever the max size that you would need on the site is, no bigger than that. Scale it down as much as you can, and then upload it to your site. Kind of behind the scenes, something they don't have to think about is the WordPress Smush It plugin on the repo will kind of minimize or reduce the file size for them. So I think it's kind of good for that, if then they don't have to worry about using some extra third-party tool that they might kind of forget to do, or it won't really happen, that kind of thing.
That's a good reason.
It's a no. Yeah. I use it for that. It works behind the scenes, and they don't know it, and their site's snappier as a result. So.
I can dig it.
Yeah, man.
But you have to send me that again. What was that? File optimizer?
Image Optim, right?
Image Optim is the Mac app. Yep. The Windows equivalent of File Optimizer, all one word.
That's the one I need. I've
The
got
Windows.
I need the file. I've been looking for one, a comparable one for.
Okay. I don't know if it has all. I don't know if it has all the features or not, but looks like people are claiming it's somewhat similar. But I have one. I have two external resources. If now is a good moment to interject those, real quick. Just two things. When this topic comes up, these two presentations that really influenced me or taught me a lot. I was just going to relay to the viewers of this. One is related to caching. This is free on WordPress.tv. Lots of great videos. You can spend a lot of time watching videos by really smart folks at WordPress.tv and learn a lot. But one of them specific to caching I think is really good is by Topher DeRoja. It's called Caching: Absolute Beginner to Wizard. And it says, this talk discusses how to speed up your site using caching via easy plugins like WP Supercache, W3 Total Cache, using transients, and server-side options like Memcache, APC, and Batcache. So this is more of a deep dive than what we've gone into here if somebody needs something even further. Topher, that developer, he used to work for this company, Varsity News Network, which is just a absolutely huge multi-site installation. They run on high school athletic departments across the entire country. They just operate a huge number. So for him, getting every single, saving every byte, that they possibly could was a huge deal. So he put a lot of time and energy into himself learning all the ins and outs of caching. So that presentation I'd really recommend. It goes into quite a lot of detail. Another one that is now free actually is on WPSessions.com. There's a presentation by Aaron Jorbin called Tools for Developing High-Performing Sites. And this, again, is more of a deep dive than what we've gone into here. He has a little different approach than Topher, using some tools that he installs locally on his computer to test the load time, and then does a few things to try to reduce them, and then runs the test again to try to minimize load times as much as possible. But again, learned a lot from that presentation too. Lastly, one final thought I had, just for folks watching this, just a note on why speeding up your site is so important. Of course, we all know just intuitively, if you use the web at all, that it's just nice. It's just more convenient to have a faster site. But far beyond that, I read this study. I just pulled it up again, but it's by the Aberdeen group. This is a research group. They found that a 1 second delay in load times, like on e-commerce sites, for instance, reduces conversions by 7%. Was their finding? A 1 second load time would do that. So that means, to put it in perspective, that means if you have a WordPress e-commerce based site, let's say, that does $1,000 per day in business, that would mean, at the end of the year, if you haven't shaved off that second yet, if people are still having to wait that full second, over the course of the year, you would lose $25,000. Right? But if you put a little time into, again, the things we've talked about here, making images as small and as lean as possible, minifying the CSS and JavaScript, something we maybe didn't touch on, making things like the JavaScript that don't need to load right away, putting them at the bottom of the page so that they load when the footer loads instead of being at the top and kind of delaying the page load, little tricks like that. Stuff like that, if you can shave off, and caching. you can shave off even 1 second to up conversions by 7% is going to be a huge trade-off and well worth any time invested in doing that. So just a thought on the importance. And the last note, I guess, would just relate back to our very last hangout on air that we did related to Google, page rankings and SEO. Just because a quicker, snappier site is going to also rank higher as well. So you'll have not only increased conversions, but better exposure on Google too. So, a few thoughts.
All right. So does anybody else? We're hitting that hour mark. Anybody else got anything they absolutely want to throw in before we call it a night?
We never talked about CDNs at all, so we should just throw it out there that CDNs are a thing, and they're a good thing.
I did cover CDNs a little bit, and I told them we use Cloudflare, and they should use Cloudflare, and I didn't go any deeper than that.
Oh, you did cover that.
We should probably have a talk about CDNs at some point.
Okay. But I don't think it's for tonight.
No.
All right. Well, I see somebody's doing a countdown timer. We're hitting our hour mark. And so, thanks for watching, everybody. It's been a good one. I enjoyed it. I don't know who to blame on the countdown timer. Apparently, somebody's got something important to do tonight. All right.
All right.
Call it a night. Thanks, guys.
Good night.
All right.